you tonight.
Yeah, that's all right, man.
At this time, the mayor will call to order the regular city council meeting for 6 p.m. Tuesday, February the 15th of 2022. City Council Chambers, 201 East Nash Street, Terrell, Texas. Present in the chambers are District 2, Grady Simpson. District 3, Mayrani Velazquez, Mayor Pro Tem. District 4, Stephanie Holmes Thomas, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem. District 5, Tim Royce. And our city manager, Mike Sims. So we have a quorum present. This time, Grady, would you lead us in invocation, please? And if you would, remain standing for the pledges.
Yes, ma'am. May we bow our heads, please? Father God, we come giving you thanks for another opportunity to come together again. We ask for your wisdom and your guidance. We ask that you would guide our footsteps in leading this city. We pray for those who have suffered through COVID and who are still continuing to heal. We pray that you will guide them and their families and lead them in a way that will bring them back and make them whole. All in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Under the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Our next item on the agenda is mayor and council community recognition and events. Do we have any? Mayor Ronnie, did you want to talk a little bit about your leadership, Kaufman County, and what's going on there?
Sure. So the city of Terrell always has at least one or two representatives from the organization that participate in Kaufman, in Leadership Kaufman. The class is 2021, 2022, and I have Omaira Mata, who is in the room today and works in our planning department, that is also part of the class with me. And the leadership class always does a group project. And this year we have selected both the Kaufman County Children's Advocacy Center and Lone Star CASA. They're both organizations that serve our Kaufman County children that are currently in foster care. So we are doing a fundraiser. We have raffle tickets. For those in the audience, I'll certainly advertise and say I have some raffle tickets, and we have sponsorships, opportunities to donate items for an auction that we'll have available there. So if you or somebody you know or a business is interested, please feel free to reach out to myself or Mayra Mata from the city of Terrell and help us to make a difference through fundraising for both of these wonderful organizations that provide services for our most vulnerable in our community.
Wonderful. Thank you, Councilwoman. Does anybody else have any comments or recognitions? Hearing none, our next item on the agenda is to hear remarks from visitors. We do have someone who would like to address the council. If you would, please come forward. And Michelle Frazier, if you would come forward and give us your address, and then you may speak.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Michelle Frazier. My residence is 405 West Cottage Street, Terrell, Texas, 75160. I am here today to address the council concerning getting proper drainage on my street. I've talked to Billy Beggs several times about the situation. He's been constantly giving me excuses. COVID, the house on Hattie Street, they're having problems down there. But this is something that has been ongoing for a while now. And it's really, it needs to be fixed. I'm gonna just put it like that. It needs to be fixed. Because of the amount of taxes that I pay, it's a shame that when my visitors come, in order to visit me, they have to step in the mud. Sometimes they're getting stuck in the mud because it does not have proper drainage there. To help, to allow you to be able to understand and see what I'm talking about, I have some pictures here of the drainage that's on Cottage, that is on Rockwall Street. That's on the corner of Rockwall and Cottage Street. This is where all the water's supposed to flow. But as you can see, it's debris and different things that's there because water is not draining to this area because this is what's in front of my yard and down the street. And it never dries up. It never dries up because whatever is going on the street above is causing problems where I stay. So I'm asking that the council will consider helping me with this problem, and that you guys would approve for proper drainage. Do I need to leave these, or?
If you would, Fenner?
Okay.
Would you take those?
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Frazier. We appreciate your comments. Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is adoption of minutes. It's discuss and consider minutes from the regular city council meeting on February the 8th of 2022. Is there a motion on item 6.1?
Mayor, I make a motion that we approve item 6.1, approving the regular city council minutes from February the 8th.
We have a motion from Tim Royce, District 5. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second from Grady Simpson, District 2. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion will carry. Our next item on the agenda is public hearings. 7.1, conduct a public hearing to receive comments regarding a change in zoning from commercial C to downtown district DD. The property is 0.18 acres out of the Barr S. Rhodes Survey, City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, also known as 201 North Blanche Street, ZC 22-01. And this is going to be Mr. Fenner.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Before you do have a zoning change request from commercial to downtown. You might remember some time ago there was a man that came in here and he was quite upset with our process of the certificate of occupancy and developing in the city. We have had some opportunities to deal with over here in this area. This is the old red building that was an antique store for quite some time. We figured, as we have talked before, that non-conforming uses that stay stagnant for 180 days or change uses, they have to come into conformance. In that case, that building was in the non-conforming process, and we had worked with this man that came through for about a year to try to do some things with the building. There's no parking there other than in the front. The city owns the other side, which is the Nash right-of-way. However, it's not built or paved, and that's what we had started talking with him about. So things didn't work out. They tried to bring a CO in for a car, for a body shop and some other things throughout the process, and we just let them know that, first of all, we just can't give you a CO until we actually have a building permit to fix the building up. And so with all that said, we came to the end of that whole thing, and we agreed to work through the process with the applicant that they commit to rezoning the property to downtown district. This area is in the downtown study area, and this is area where we've defined this to be the downtown district. So just removing everything that's happened and going forward, the best thing to do for us right now is to downzone this from commercial to downtown district. It reduces the uses. It creates the uniqueness of the downtown district that we would like to see. It creates a site planning process that the council is able to look at and determine whether there needs to be more parking or there needs to be other things done to the building, as long as everything falls within the use. And so at the time, we allowed him to go ahead and pull a permit for just a section that he could use that would be healthy or health past the CO health part of it or the fire part of it, and allow him to use that part as long as he went through this process and started moving until he decided whether he wanted to do some renovation to the building and reuse it in a different way. And so with that said, he did do that. We went to the Planning and Zoning Commission, same explanation was there. The CO was supposed to be for antiques. That's what it is. That's what it has been applied for. And at the same time, he had to apply for the zoning. And so we did do a public hearing from the Planning and Zoning Commission. And again, the most important thing here is we're getting the properties zoned from commercial to downtown. And we're recommended that in favor of that to be recommended. P&Z voted 8-0 to grant the downtown district zoning.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fenner. So, again, this is a public hearing. We'll have an opportunity to discuss and consider on the next item. So we're going to open up the public hearing. And is there anyone here that would like to comment regarding a change in zoning from commercial to downtown district on this piece of property? Hearing none, we will close the public hearing, and we will take up item 7.2. Mr. Shumpert, could you read that into the record, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we bring to you tonight ordinance number 2902, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, amending Appendix 2, zoning ordinance of the City of Terrell by changing the zoning classification on certain real property, more particularly described as the south one-half of Lot 4, Block 71, original addition, an addition to the City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, and being a lot fronting 62 1/2 feet on Blanche Street and 125 feet on Nash Avenue, containing .20 acres of land and also known as 201 North Blanche Street, Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, from Commercial C to Downtown District DD, as shown on the plat attached here to as Exhibit A and made a part hereof for all purposes, providing for severability and providing an effective date. ZC 22-01. This comes to you tonight on first reading.
Again, council, this was an 8-0 vote by our planning and zoning. I do have a question. I know we sent out letters and we received no letters from anyone within the 200-foot of the property involved. Did anybody show up at P&Z and speak on their behalf for or against it?
No, sir.
So no one showed up?
No, sir.
Pretty simple when nobody is interested enough to even come to one of the meetings and express.
You know what? I am so sorry. There was a gentleman that showed up. He was in the audience. I just went to introduce myself, and he said he was here for that item. His question was, I'm just here to find out if my taxes are going to go up. Okay. And so I had to have that conversation with him about how this works and that there's no guarantee what happens with property values and so forth. And he could certainly speak, and he said, no, that's all I needed to know. So in short, so excuse me for that.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that we had all the information that we needed as we get ready to vote on this item. Does anybody have any comments or questions for Mr. Fenner?
Is that the standard? Do we require that people come and talk if it's something they want to change? Is that written down as the criteria that we need to?
We encourage them to come and speak.
You
They know-
just tell them that verbally, or is it something written saying this is the criteria?
No, ma'am. Don't say that's,
Nothing in writing that says that?
no, ma'am.
Okay, but in a conversation, you would say, hey, we encourage you to come talk on this if you believe in it.
Right, and so when we, just like anything else, today we spent so much time in our review committee talking about P and Z dates and council dates, and everybody's writing them down. So some think it's really important to be here. We do have an applicant here tonight. Some come, some don't speak. But it's nothing that we write down
Okay,
as a
thank you.
policy.
Anyone else? Hearing none,
Certainly, Mayor,
yes.
this property is located in my district. I'm very familiar with the area. We have, Terry Barber, Commissioner that's across the street. We have residential homes that are about immediately to the north, to the side of the home, and then we have a bookstore that is located immediately to the right of this property. So what I am pleased that the property owner is looking to change, it has made the request to change to downtown zoning. I think it will be something beneficial for the community, and it will enhance the quality of life for this area.
I agree with those comments. Anyone else? All right, is there a motion on item 7.2?
I move to approve ordinance number 2902 as presented.
We have a motion from Mayor Ronnie Velazquez, Mayor Pro Tem District 3. Is there a second?
Second.
Have a second from Stephanie Holmes Thomas, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem District 4. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion will carry. Our next item on the agenda is 7.3. Again, Mr. Shumpert, would you read into the record?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Item 7.3 is to conduct a public hearing to receive comments regarding a change in zoning from agricultural AG to single-family SF6 to allow construction of single-family residential homes. The property is Lot 1R and Lot 2R, Block 4, being 4.62 acres out of the Michael Churchwell Survey, City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, also known as 1000 Mineral Wells Road.
Thank you, Mr. Shumpert, Mayor, Council. So before you have a rezoning case. The property located on Mineral Wells, we've dealt with a few times. People have come in and tried to redevelop that area into multifamily and so forth. And it has not been accomplished. This applicant, a very fine couple that has come in, talking with us a little bit about redeveloping this area. And so we went through some of the process and encouraged them to apply for the rezoning of the property. Now, we have to remember one of the things I want to talk about is these tracks along Rose Hill and Mineral Wells and some of these other areas. These are somewhat difficult tracks to, whether they're 6 acres, 4 acres, 9 acres. Most of them are new traditional neighborhood, future land use, and they're difficult to develop with a big road network, just simply because the rectangular linear type setup of the property. And so as we were going through the Planning and Zoning Commission, I had talked with them a little bit about the property and where it was located. Of course, there's to the north is 7.5, and then ag to the south, and multifamily to the east. You can see by the map, there's several things that are around that area. Being that it was zoned new traditional neighborhood, we usually like to say, okay, hey, our characteristic of the new traditional neighborhood is 4 to 8 units per acre. And the more dense stuff that we have, I think in the characteristics of the new traditional neighborhood, the more dense areas that we have are the areas closer to transitional corridors or commercial is usually the areas that we become a little more dense. But as we are away from that, we try to stick around the 4 units per acre. So The applicant had requested SF6, and this was moving pretty quick, and we had mentioned there's, just looking at it, how you could develop it. Again, here we have a rectangular piece of property. We could probably get some volume out of it, but then we have to look at how the lots lay out, and so we need to be creative and offer up that opportunity for everyone. And so, in processing this, in my explanation to the commission, and will be the same to you, is that they were asking for the SF6. We understood the reason for the SF6, but we thought that we could do a better job with rezoning it to SF 7.5 and zone to the underlying zoning of 7.5 standards. However, have a developer's agreement on top of that, addressing some of these lot widths and some other things, because that's usually where we run into the problem. So you can have a long road that comes through there and you have deep lots, but to get the lot count that you need to make it work, for all of us, the widths become a little less than our standards. And so staff recommended that the commission vote, we would prefer 7.5, and with the possibility of developer agreement addressing some of the lot sizes and configurations. Mr. Reyes, who's in the audience here, he had no problem with the 7.5 standards, the underlying standards, and getting close to the volume. It was just the lot widths that we were going to be looking at. And one of the big points that was made, that we talked about, was density of a 5-acre tract is much different than density of a 100-acre tract. So if you do SF6 on a 100-acre tract, you'll have quite a few more homes, whereas if you do density on a 4 or 5-acre tract, it's not going to make much of a difference. So the SF6 zoning compared to the SS 7.5 in this case would really be about one lot, okay? And so as we were looking at it to make this work and get a good quality individual to build these homes, we thought, okay, let's just work it through this process. I think I have talked to a couple of the commissioners. This was a divided vote, and the motion was made, you'll see in your packet, to deny the SF6 zoning and come back with work with staff and come back with the 7.5 zoning. I think everybody on the Planning and Zoning Commission would like to see this project, and I think the three that voted against it really wanted to go with the recommendation of let's do a base zoning of 7.5 and then just place on top of it a developer's agreement to address some of the lot widths and so forth. And so that's why you see the vote of 5-3 to deny the zoning. Well, I felt that I needed to have a meeting with the applicant, and so we ended up having a meeting actually the next day, and we talked a little bit about what we were thinking and how we could do this, and I needed to continue to bring this recommendation to the city council. And so in the meantime, we wrote a developer's agreement and worked out some pretty pictures and elevations and some street renderings. We gave them our street layout of 58-foot right-of-way rendition of how you build to that, and talked a little bit about the house sizes and what they do and so forth. And so I asked them to allow me to do the developer's agreement and present it. It's section 9. It's item 9.5 on your agenda. But we have to go through this first. So we did address it through the developer's agreement, I think. I think we would get a really good product if we did accept the zoning. We did make a recommendation to zone at 7.5 with the developer's agreement to address some of the variation in lot widths and so forth. And that would basically take a supermajority vote from the council to overturn that. But I can assure you, thank you. I can assure you that in the developer's agreement, The real issue we had here was a 53-foot lot that we were gonna have. We did have a connection to Wood Street we had him do. We also have an average of 133-foot lot in depth, so we're over the 7,000 square foot. We're at about 7,200 square foot, I believe. We did get the 58-foot streetscape area where we have the 30-foot pavement, and then we have the 10-foot median planter, which you have a lot more landscaping. Then you have in the tree planted in the same spot, and then you have the sidewalk, and then from the back of the sidewalk, you have a garage setback. So it makes that area more appealing, and we're gonna be applying this to all of our neighborhoods. We've applied it to the Woodlands, and we're trying to apply it to everywhere else. Mr. Reyes took it to his architect, and I think within 3 or 4 days, submitted us a plan showing how he could do that. And so we went through that developer's agreement, and we are happy, of course, the council would have to approve that developer's agreement. But I will tell you the difference again between the 7.5 and the 6. On the developer's agreement, we will have the 7.5 standard, so you will have the 2,000 square foot minimum. You'll have all this, okay, for the new development. But you will have a little less lot width, but you will have a much deeper lot, and that's what you would see on the developer's agreement. So staff recommends, and I don't think it's in any way going against what the spirit of what the commission wanted, but we would recommend that we do rezone it to 7.5 and then attach a developer's agreement to address some of these issues that we can't quite make the 7.5, which are just a couple. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
So again, this is a public hearing portion of it, is that right? So we need to hear remarks, and then on the next item is when we'll actually be able to get into some discussion, on it, okay? So at this time, this is a public hearing. Is there, we're gonna open the public hearing. Is there anyone to speak on behalf of this item? Okay. All right, we will close the public hearing, and we'll move on to item 7.4. Again, Mr. Shumpert?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. We bring to you tonight ordinance number 2903, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, amending Appendix 2 zoning ordinance of the City of Terrell by changing the zoning classification on certain real property more particularly described as lots 1R and 2R, replat of lots 1 and 2, Ardwin Gary addition to the City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, containing 4.62 acres of land and also known as 1000 Mineral Wells Street, Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, from agricultural AG to single-family residential 6, SF6, as shown on the plat attached here to as Exhibit A, and made a part hereof for all purposes, providing for severability and providing an effective date, ZC 22-02. This again comes to you tonight on first reading.
Mayor and Council, can I just give you a little more orientation to this item here? So remember, we bring the ordinance to you the way it originally started its life and coming through the process. If you are interested in moving forward in the direction of the staff recommendation, then you would have to move on this item saying that you approve ordinance 2903 with the exception of, or with the change of, single-family SF 7.5 instead of SF 6, okay? So if you want to move forward with the recommendation from staff, then that would be the way to do that. If you want to deny it, then that's okay. That's a simple thing, right? You would just deny it as is. But if you are interested in moving forward in the staff recommendation, you got to be careful about wording your motion related to changing that to SF 7.5.
Well, so we're going to be discussing this again at 9.4, right? Is it the development agreement?
Right, so if you did change, and just to talk a little bit more about the ordinance and changing it, if you did change it to recommend that it be changed to 7.5, that's the way it sits. That would be the approval of the zoning for that property. And then later, there's a developer's agreement that would be addressing some of the development standards within that subdivision, so.
I guess I need for legal, we don't want to take them together, we want them separate?
You can do them either way, Mr. Mayor. You can do them together, you can do them separately. Since they're separate on the agenda, I'd recommend we keep them separate for now. One other point too, Mr. Mayor, and I think Mr. Fenner alluded to this, since P&Z had voted originally to deny the zoning, if we choose to do what Mr. Fenner and Mr. Sims has indicated, if you want to change the SF6 to SF7.5, it would take a 3/4 majority of the council to overrule the recommendation of planning and zoning.
Right, okay. Well, so,
Again, the recommendation from planning and zoning
Was to deny it.
was to deny.
well, but here's the thing, it was to deny the SF6.
Yes.
Not to deny SF7 is what we would want to change it to. 7.5.
So far as Charles could tell from talking to the Planning and Zoning Commission, they seem to wish that the applicant had come forward originally under 7.5. So when the applicant came forward as 6, they got a no vote, 5-3. And what Charles is telling you is that our understanding of the wishes of planning and zoning was that they were wishing that it originally had come forward as SF 7.5. So you're not contradicting the spirit of what P&Z did, but you have to specifically contradict their vote because their vote was to reject SF6.
Yes. So,
In addition, this is coming to you on first reading, Mr. Mayor. If the council elects to do what Mr. Sims suggested, it will come back to you on second reading, and it would show then SF 7.5.
yeah, and so I'm in favor of moving this item to be SF 7.5. Is there anybody?
So right now, for clarity, it is AG Ag, most of it.
Right.
And a touch of retail. I do not always care for the statement of the wish of the board, right? What made the board decide 7.5 was better than 6? Was it a personal opinion? Was there guidance? Was there something in our comprehensive plan that led them that way? How did they get to, we would prefer this as opposed to that?
The only thing that really came up was just traffic and congestion, talking about buses, and I'm not really sure all the details with that. But we'll tell you, one of the commissioners did make a point that, in calculating, again, this is not a 100-acre tract. It's a 5-acre tract, 6-acre tract. And the difference between the SF 7.6 and 7.75 in housing or number of lots is 1. And so what the commission liked was the standards of the 7.5. However, they could deal with it because with maybe a developer's agreement or addressing some of the lot width because you can't make all the lot widths work in that area without losing the lot, and then it basically becomes a 7.5 anyway.
Right. If it was a
6, excuse me.
if it was 6.5, right, or 6, what am I?
6.
Okay, if it was a 6, then our smallest lot width would be what?
60 foot.
As opposed to the 65?
Right, at the time before the ordinance changes, it would still be 60.
Okay.
So,
I'm going to pass it to someone else if they got a question.
Yes, you used the term deeper lots earlier, right? What I want to know, does that translate into larger front yard, backyard? Or does it mean you don't have as much?
It can transfer to either one. If they want to place the house in the back, they can do that. A little further back, they can do that. If they want to just do the minimum setbacks, they'll have that additional 30 feet that they could have on the lot. So could be bigger lots, big backyards.
so to be clear for the council, had they have gone to the commission with SF 7.5, I know you can't, we don't have tea leaves up here, but I'm hearing from you that they would have approved it at SF 7.5.
Yes, sir.
Another question. What does the comprehensive plan call for?
New traditional neighborhoods, so 4 to 8 units per acre. And that's the high.
There's a chart in the comprehensive plan that translates what Charles just said to SF6 or SF 7.5 are acceptable in this comprehensive plan area.
Okay, so there we go. Comprehensive plan says FS6 or FS 7.5 would work. So either would work. The applicant came forward. It is rare that you're going to hear me rail against standards, and I'm not railing against standards. But I'm telling you, the comprehensive plan, I like following the rules. The comprehensive plan says that's an allowable use of 6. So I'm not sure why our board decided, and it's a board decision, right? I can't fault them for their vote, but I'm not sure why our board decided just off a gut reaction to move it to 7.5.
Well,
I think the applicant came back and said, or we relayed to them, would you be willing to go to 7.5? And then we contacted P&Z and said, would it
Yeah, and
work
I
at
think
7.5?
also part of the issue here is, and I feel like we're going to have this conversation a lot over the next couple of years. If an applicant moves forward and the P&Z is sort of on the fence with the project, sometimes the best way to move the project forward is to say, really, it takes the partnership of your Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council. The Planning and Zoning Commission can put a base zoning on it, and you can move forward and say, hey, just go do this base zoning. Or you can say, hey, you know, that piece of land is unique. And so Councilman Simpson and I have been out looking at that piece of land over the last couple of years, and it's a notable location. There's some trees out there that are absolutely awesome. And so if you have a development agreement where you say, okay, we're going to provide for slightly deeper lots, we're going to have a little bit more flexibility with the lot size because we're putting it into a development agreement, it gives you the opportunity to save some more of those trees and make sure you put the house on the piece of land in a way where you can maximize managing some of those nice old trees out there. So I think that what you're going to get a lot is, well, the development agreement can, A, provide for a little bit more flexibility, but B, it also can get our masonry standard in there and make sure that we're doing a brick house or a certain percentage of brick on the house. And then from the developer's point of view, they can say, hey, I wasn't sure about the 65-foot lot or the 60-foot lot or the 70-foot lot or the 75-foot lot. I was really comfortable with many of them being 56 feet and some of them being a different distance. And there's not going to be a lot of cut-through traffic here. So therefore, let's go for this compromise number. And it's sort of the same example I used before. When you and your P&Z can work in tandem, then you can kind of sew up something that is better than just using one of you, right? The teamwork between P&Z and City Council to create a development agreement and base zoning, I mean, that's just a model that I think we're going to see more and more because of what the state law changes have been over the last few years. So I know I'm not directly answering any particular question here. I'm just saying that the philosophy of why did Charles bring this forward like this was trying to balance the needs of the community, the needs of the piece of land, and the needs of the developer, and try to come forward with a balanced program. And that's our toolkit. Our toolkit is to use both zoning and development agreement.
This is what I frown on. The developer, or they brought, they wanted this and it's within the comprehensive plan. I frown on the city staff saying, well, I suggest, I don't think we should be doing that as city staff. If this is within the guidelines of what we have, and we need to allow it. That's my stance. That's always going to be my stance. We all have preferences, but I do not think city staff should be initiating that dialogue.
Okay.
And if this is within the standards, I'm already telling you guys, I'm going to vote for it. Or I guess if they denied it, I'll vote the opposite way, or however the motion is. I hope I can understand it in my head. I'm so confused now.
Can I insert?
Yeah, sure.
I don't mean to cut you off. So we're not pushing that. We offer up because you got to remember whether it's SF6 or 7.5, they still can't meet the width requirements. So it's just your staff doing extra work, trying to figure out how we can make this work. Because even with SF6, they will not meet the standards. They will not meet the 60-foot width. So I have to find a way to make it work, to make the development work, and have the trade-offs that bring quality. And it's not me pushing it, because obviously, now I could just say no and just please go out the door, because it would make my job a lot easier. But if they're willing to do 7,500 square foot, but they just still can't get the lots, it doesn't matter if it's SF6, SF 7.5, what have you, they would still be in a situation where a variance would be needed for every lot width, or they would just have to cut it down, 7.5 or 6. And so that's how the negotiation and the conversation is developed. It's not me pushing them into it, it's me allowing them the option. So not only that is, okay, well, you have a 56-foot width, then drop a lot. So you're back down to it anyway. So, or if you don't want that, then you're out of it. And so the idea was, can we go with just doing 56-foot lots, having deeper lots? Because again, remember, that property is straight linear. There's going to be one street going through there. And so the conversation and planning this out for what's best is, okay, let's get a connection back in off Wood Street into the next subdivision. So that obviously they'll dedicate right away and lose a lot there. They're willing to do that. And follow our 58-foot streetscape right away that we have developed that we think is great for the city, that will be wonderful, aside from the 50-foot, because the 50-foot's what's required in a right-of-way dedication. So, and in all that said, even if we tell them, they still come before you. You still have the right to make the decision. P&Z had the right to make the decision, and they did it 5-3, and you have the right to make a decision. But we're not going to push it in a direction. We're just going to say, hey, how can we make this work? Because we knew, even if it was zoned SF6, and remember, there's not a subdivision in front of you. You understand that, right? So there's not a lot layout. They're just taking a square or a rectangular piece of property, and they want an entitlement of SF6. That's before they do any site planning or any platting to really figure out, oh no, we can't meet 60-foot lot widths, but we can make 135-foot deep instead of 100-foot deep. Can we work that out? And so that's the part that we do. And again, if our idea is not the best, P&Z can take it down and you can take it down.
Mayor?
So, yeah, but
what-
let me make one comment first of all. One, I want our staff engaged in the process of bringing things to the council. That is what you get paid for. We use your expertise. We're not experts in planning development. We're not experts about building. None of us are. And so they're paid to look after the interest of the city. And so I can appreciate the work that's done by the staff. Go ahead.
Mayor, this is in Grady's district, so I'd like to hear from him, and we have the applicant here, so I'd also like to take a moment to hear from the applicant. But before doing that, I will ask you to indulge me in a 3-minute recess. So I move to have it a 3-minute recess.
I can do that. Is there a motion to recess?
May I make a motion that we have a 3-minute recess?
We have a motion from Grady Simpson. Is there a second?
Second.
Have a second from Tim Royce. All those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're recessed. I'm waiting to be there. We're going to reconvene into regular session. Is there a motion for us to lay on the table item 7.4?
Mayor, I'm going to make a motion that we lay 7.4 on the table to come back later in this meeting.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Have a second? Oh, wait. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're going to lay it on the table, and then we're going to go back and revisit and reopen our public hearing for item 7.3. Do I need to read it back into the record, or we're good? So we're just going to open again and give anyone who would like to speak to the council, the mayor and the council, to please come forward, and if you would just state your name. And we're going to gavel into the public hearing.
Good evening. My name is Rogelio Reyes. My wife is Lourdes.
My name is Lourdes Reyes.
Okay, so if you would, just tell us a little bit about the project and what you would like to do here.
Yes, we start in the first month with about the development options in Terrell, Texas. We evaluate the options for us to invest here, and we found, well, in the beginning, a very nice city, very close to the Metroplex area. But also, we found very friendly staff in here because give us real guidance about the right way to take for do the things correctly. Well, that's why we start to search about some properties, and we found this lot, and start discussions with the city, with the officers of the city, and take the decision to develop this project. In the beginning, we think that was useful for us, the 6.5 changed the zoning, but after reviews, after some discussion, we think that the option for 7.5 is also very good for us, and also special for the area because in the front of the lot is a multifamily and is another subdivision in the left of the lot, and we think we can do a very nice subdivision, a very nice area with lots with 7.5, filling the 7.5 requirements. We talked with Mr. Fenner and the zoning department about the development agreement that give us some kind of guidance about the characteristics for develop the properties, the project, and we agree with that. We agree because we understand the project for the city for the next years, and we are very happy to start here, and not just with this, with more properties because the area is growing, but growing with guidance, with limits, with very very ordinated, and I think it's a good opportunity for us.
Well, I am in charge of of the best part of the project. I start, my work and our company, it's a family company, but we've been doing this for 30 years. And the best part, and I really want to tell you, is we not just build the houses, we build homes for the people. What we like to do in Terrell, we want to be part of the Terrell and give to Terrell the homes for the people to feel, when you get a home, we want you to come to our homes and feel like it's your home, So that's my point, that's my part, that's my work on the company. I decorate all the things, I pick all the materials when you get in, I try to feel like a home. So maybe it's different from other companies that is just numbers. No, we try to build homes because this is a family, a family business. So that's my point.
Thank you so much for those comments. I hope it's given council a little bit of background as to what you're going to do. This is a public hearing, so we can't go back and forth and ask questions, but it's just to take in information. But I think that was very useful on our part. So thank you very much for those comments. Okay.
Oh, and I forget something, to tell you something.
Yes.
And we really, we are very worried about the green things. I mean, to build more green things, like yards with, with trees, with good electricity, maybe in the future, and, start doing more moderns, because the time is coming, so. That's my.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry for the English.
Don't throw them under the bus. man. All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? All right, we're going to close this hearing once again, and we'll move back to item 7.4.
Yep, so Mayor, I'm going to make a motion that we reconsider 7.4, so that allows us to open it back up.
Yes.
So I'm glad the applicant's here. I'm glad they talked.
Hold on. We have a motion.
Oh,
to reconsider,
yes,
right.
yes.
We have a motion from Tim Royce. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mayor Ronnie Velazquez, Mayor Pro Tem District 3. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, go ahead.
Okay, so, no, good procedure. Thank you for the applicant for coming. I would say, hey, staff, I think I'll close my comments because the applicant spoke in favor of the 7.5. And then, so now that we're not in public hearing, man, thank you to the applicant for a good rendering and a good product. I mean, it does look very nice. I would ask staff and even our boards to be cautious, though, with if it fits within our comprehensive plan, it should fit.
Point taken, Councilman. I hear you. Next. Mayor Ronnie, did you want to speak?
Well, I'm ready to.
Oh, you ready to make a motion?
There's no other comment.
Is there any further discussion? Is there a motion on 7.4?
And I move to approve ordinance number 2903 with the exception of 7.5 instead of SF6.
We have a motion from Mayor Ronnie Velazquez, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem District 3. Is there a second? Have a second from Grady Simpson, District 2. Any further discussion?
Mayor, I certainly echo what Councilmember Royce indicated. I understand the 6 and the 7.5 both fit. There were some concerns with the width. Should the applicant have said, they wanted to stick with F6 and found a way to do that, then I would have been in favor of that. The applicant spoke to the SF 7.5, allowing for the additional green space and the preservation of the green areas, and seems like they want to move forward and excited about 7.5. So I'm going to join them in their excitement as well.
Thank you. All those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion will carry. Next item on the agenda is 8.1. Discuss financial considerations related to potential new TERS agreement. This is Jason Hughes. Hilltop.
So Mayor and Council, as Mr. Hughes is coming up, we've talked in executive session and in open session here several times over the last really 6 to 9 months about different little steps in the process to create some new tax increment refinance zones, probably overlaying them with either public improvement districts or some other kind of district structure. And I just thought it was a good idea to take a deep breath and listen to our financial advisor about some of the major considerations related to that. Jason was kind enough to meet with us a couple of times on this, and he's got a nice little presentation for you. I encourage you to ask him any questions you've got.
Thank you, Jason. Go right ahead.
Mayor and Council, good evening. It's good to be with you. So Mr. Sims gave a great kind of overview of what we're going to be talking about, which is really just a very general, high-level overview of public improvement districts, and tax increment reinvestment zones. And just for some context, so I do quite a bit of speaking on these districts, and I'm going to be giving a presentation here in a couple of months at the Council of Governments that will probably last about 3 hours. So before anyone passes out, I'm going to try to keep my comments to about 15 minutes. But again, as Mr. Sims said, please interrupt and ask any questions you may have. That's fine. Perfect. Thank you. So first off, let's start with just a couple of basics. And of course, the City of Terrell does have a tax increment reinvestment zone, or a TIRZ. You may also hear the term a TIF, or a tax increment financing. Those are one and the same. So TIF, TIRZ, one and the same. This is a zone that's typically within the city limits, although it can be within the ETJ. One thing that's very important is the council creates that. And this will be a theme as I kind of go through these slides about who has control, who's done the creation, things of that nature. So council does create that TIF or the TIRZ. The base value is established, and I'll touch on that just a little bit on the next page. A TIRZ can collect property taxes, which is most common. It can also collect sales taxes. So those are the two revenues. And the goal of the TIRZ is ultimately to use the revenues that you get from within the TIRZ to make the improvements within the TIRZ or leading up to the TIRZ. So you can have off-site, what are called off-site improvements as well. The other thing is the TIRZ may also be used to fund economic development grants. So the nice thing is the TIRZ statute in the state of Texas is very broad as to what can be financed, how those TIRZ can be used, things of that nature. And then that last bullet point, as you can see there, other municipal entities can participate in the TIRZ. And what's most common is a county participating. School districts, as an example, cannot participate or do not participate because the state dings them on their funding if they are in a TIRZ. So what's most common, again, is that you see that counties may participate as well. Next slide. So this just briefly goes through the TIRZ mechanics. And so as you can see there, whenever the TIRZ is created, you take the base value, and this is assuming a property tax revenue TIRZ, but you take the base value, and this example is $500,000 in the dark blue. Anything over that, so as improvements are made to the TIRZ, anything over that, that portion of the improvements goes to the TIRZ, depending on what city council elects to, or how much it elects to participate. So as a very easy example, if the value after, or in the second year of the TIRZ is $2 million, you have your base value $500,000, $1.5 million would go to the TIRZ. In this example, what this says is city says, okay, we'll participate in a TIRZ to 40%, and then we'll keep 60%. And again, those numbers are purely subject to what council ultimately decides and works out with a developer through a development agreement. Next slide, thank you. So that's TIRZ, again, very quickly going through high level. The next one that you might not be quite as familiar with is a PID, or Public Improvement District. And I believe the city has some that are primarily maintenance-based, but one of the things that we will be talking about in the next couple of slides is that they're capital-based. So as you can see there, that Public Improvement District, an area defined within the city, it can also be in the ETJ. I would highly recommend if you set up a public improvement district. This is a very strong development tool that you're providing. Bring the development into the city because you get the benefit, right, via property taxes, right? So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to create that, leave it in the ETJ and not collect property taxes. Again, one of the key points to a public improvement district is it is created by the city. It is controlled 100% by the city. There's other aspects of it too that the city 100% controls, which I'll talk about in just one moment. Why would a city create a public improvement district? Ultimately, what are you trying to do? You're trying to provide a special benefit or a nicer, higher quality development. So in theory, what you're doing is saying, okay, developer, we'll help you put in the infrastructure, the public improvements, roads, water, sewer, drainage, things of that nature. And in theory, what they're going to do is, since they're getting some help there and they're not having to spend their capital for that, they're going to amenitize that development to a higher standard than what you otherwise would see, right? So you may have a pool, for example. You may have some kind of neighborhood gathering center. You may have walking, biking trails, things of that nature. Again, the PID can't pay for those because those are not public improvements. So the developer would pay for those amenities, but you would have those amenities in there via having the public improvement district. So how does a public improvement district or a PID operate? The PID collects assessments. So they're not a tax, but an assessment, okay? And so as you can see there, that assessment lien goes in before the homestead. So said another way, the assessment's put on the house before the homeowner gets there. All of it is told to the homeowner, okay, you're moving into a public improvement district. Here is the value of the lien that's been put on your house. You can pay it off today, so it can be paid off or prepaid, or it can be paid off over a series of years with an interest component. So that's one of the nice things, unlike taxes, right? Because you can't prepay your taxes because you have no idea what your value will be, right, on your home. You have no idea what the taxes will be via the tax rates in the future. The assessment is set up, though, to where it is, again, established on the very front end. It's a finite amount, and it's a known amount. So I can, again, go in, if I buy a lot, and I say, okay, you know what, I don't want to pay this interest component, I just want to pay this off, I can do that. So that's one of the nice things within the PID statute. The assessments can be capital, and again, that would be for funding major items, or you could have it as a maintenance assessment as well. One of the things that we try and do as much as possible is to put that on the property tax bill, because what we have found is as PIDs have become more prevalent in the state of Texas, if that PID assessment's on the property tax bill, most people will look at their property tax bill and say, okay, my property tax bill is $3,000, and it's the city, it's the county, it's the school district, it's my assessment. I'm going to send in a payment for $3,000, right? They're not segregating that and saying, okay, well, I'm just gonna pay my taxes and not my assessment. So we see a very high collection rate whenever that's also put on the tax bill. I went and talked about being able to be prepaid, and then you can see there, the assessment is subordinate to government taxes. So your taxes, city taxes come first, county taxes, school taxes come before that in the waterfall. But it is superior to private financing. So the assessment would be paid before a homeowner's home mortgage. The PIDs, again, much like the TERS, are very broad as far as what can be funded, as long as it's public infrastructure. And again, what is most common are water, sewer, drainage, streets. You can see their public safety, and parks also fall within that category. Next slide. So again, what we're trying to do with the PID is, instead of having the entire city pay for this infrastructure, it's the beneficiaries that are paying for it, right? So if you move into a PID, you have this annual assessment, and so you're the one that's benefiting from it, you're the one that's paying for it. So that's the nice thing. We localize the repayment for that infrastructure. A couple of things here, that service and assessment plan, that's simply what is required via statute. As you can see there, it includes a number of things. The projects that are being funded with the PID, the assessment lien that's included in there, and things of that nature. Now, one of the key components in this is most developers will approach a city and say, okay, we'd like to come to you. We have 200 lots that we'd like to develop within city limits. We'd like some help on that. Will you give us a public improvement district? One of the things, too, that is most common that they'll ask is say, okay, if the city is okay setting up this PID, we'd also like to do bond financing. Now, the nice thing about the bond financing is it is not on the city's balance sheet. It is not secured by any city taxes, any city revenues such as water and sewer revenues or anything like that. It is secured solely by the PID assessments, okay? So whenever you look at an official statement, in fact, I was reading one for another client, it's about a 500-page document that says very clearly in bold on the front, the city of Terrell, for example, does not provide any taxes to this, right? It's solely those assessments. So as you can see there, it does not pledge or encumber any city funds. And the other nice thing is the rating agencies have looked at this and said, okay, since it is not secured by and not repayable from city taxes or water and sewer revenues, it doesn't ding your credit rating. So that's very good too. And then the last thing there, and again, with this being kind of the very high level, we do have various financial metrics that we look at that we try to use to limit the amount of debt that's put on a piece of property. So we're not trying to get it to such a point to where someone has an assessment lien that's put on their property that makes it uncompetitive with a neighboring property. And that would be something that if the city were to move forward, we'd probably have a little bit more in-depth discussions, but that is something that we do look at. This goes through, and I want to spend just a little bit of time, so I just went through the public improvement districts. Again, remember the key item with the public improvement districts is use city create it, you administer it on an annual basis, you issue the debt for it. Again, it's not encumbered from any of your general funds or anything of that, but you are in control, period, end of story, with a public improvement district. Everything that's done within a PID requires the city. If you look on the other side, a lot of times you see other development districts that are called municipal utility districts, or also water control and improvement districts. They're known generally as water districts in Texas. And a lot of times what you'll see is a developer will use those to do exactly what I kind of went through. They'll put infrastructure in. The MUDs or WICKEDs, as they're known as, for their acronyms, can be used to also fund developer interest, and so they're a little bit more, can be a little bit more lucrative to the developer. And one of the things that's very important to remember is a MUD or a WICKED is a separate governmental entity. So said another way, you can have an entity residing within your city limits that has its own board, that makes its own decisions, that has, in large parts, a lot of autonomy from the city. And that's something that, again, you don't have with the public improvement district. So as you see there, those MUDs and WICKEDs, generally speaking, the same allowable projects. They can do water, sewer, drainage. In certain instances, they have roads, or can do roads as well. The revenue stream, it is more often than not taxes. And so that's the other thing too, is you have another taxing entity within your city limits. And of course, those taxes can go up. They obviously can come down as well, but they can't be prepaid. And generally speaking, those MUDs and WICKEDs go into perpetuity. So it's not one of those things, whereas the PID, if a PID has debt outstanding, once that debt's paid off, it's done, right? And it goes away because, again, the PID is you. And here, as you can see, those MUDs or WICKEDs don't have that option necessarily. Next page. So this just goes through, and I'll hit just a couple of the high points again. This one compares tax increment reinvestment zones, which would be the city, public improvement district, which would be the city, and I shouldn't say compares them, just summarizes it. Both created by city council action. Neither one of those is a separate governmental entity. It is controlled 100%, or both are controlled 100% by the city. You have the revenue streams there. One thing that's important to know, the line or the section there, additional cost to owner. A tax increment reinvestment zone, if I live in a TERS and I pay my taxes, I don't pay any more taxes than the neighbor across the street. What happens is my taxes may go somewhere slightly different, right? Portion may go to the City of Terrell General Fund, a portion may go to that TERS fund. If I live in a public improvement district, I am absolutely paying more than my neighbor across the street who is not in a PID. So I do want to be very clear about that because, again, there is the assessment that is levied and collected within that public improvement district. As far as I talked a little bit about those PIDs, they can be financed with the debt. And then you can see there are termination provisions for the TERS and the PID. So just as I'm kind of wrapping up here, a couple of things that I would certainly recommend as the city is looking at these, as the city has developers that are coming and saying, hey, we would like this, we would like that. I think one of the main items in my mind as a financial advisor to city is basically the city kind of having an idea, what do we want to be? Where do we want to go? In 10 years, what do we want to look like? And I understand that's certainly hard, right? Because, I mean, you don't have the crystal ball and things could slow down. We've been in a huge period of growth. Tax values have been going up, things of that nature. But I think it is important to have a general plan, if you will. And in talking with Mr. Sims, I know that's certainly something the city's been very engaged in kind of what the city looks like in 10 or even 20 years. So I think that's certainly important. I think creating a PID policy and a TERS policy is important. It gives you the ability to have kind of a framework to operate in. It's not to say that you can't step outside of that, right? If you have a development that say, you know what, because of this benefit that we would be getting, we'd be willing to do something a little bit outside of our policy, but it at least gives you a starting point. So the policy is meant to be flexible and not ultra rigid, but give you kind of a guideline. One thing I would highly recommend too is if you have a developer that comes to you and says, okay, we would like to have a public improvement district, I would strongly recommend having a full development agreement approved before you create that PID. I have seen firsthand where City Council, for whatever reason, has decided to go ahead and approve the PID, the creation of the PID, and funnily enough, all of a sudden, some of the terms from the developer kind of changed. They're like, oh, well, you know what, we thought about this, we'd like to do something different. Put the development agreement in place, that's something that the city and its team can do, then move forward with that creation of the PID, if that's what you choose to do. One of the things I always tell my city clients is each and every PID and TERS will be different. Evaluate them on their own metrics. Yes, if you have a PID policy or TERS policy, you can go and look back at that. But every single one of them, in my experience, has been different. And there's always kind of different things that are included from one TERS to another, from one PID to another. And then the last one I would tell you as well on slide 7 is once you approve, in particular, the PIDs, expect people to come knocking on your door. So it's very common, and again, we are in a period of phenomenal growth. I represent a number of cities in Collin County, in Denton County as well, and so if you go along that 380 corridor, I have a number of cities kind of north of there. And generally speaking, once you see a city create a PID, you have developers come knocking at their door and quite frankly wanting PIDs or a TERS or maybe and a TERS in certain cases. So the expectation would be if you do approve one that you'll have more lining up behind it. Again, I would go back to the point right before it. Each one of them has to be evaluated on their own merits, right? So the last thing, just very quickly, and I'll kind of let council go through this on their own. I included 2 slides here. There are administrative responsibilities with both the TERS and the PID. The one thing I will tell you, both of those generally will have a life of 20 to 30 years. So it's much like having a child that stays at home and is still living with you. Do not think that you are going to simply create these and forget about them. There are certain things that you'll have to do, certain things you'll have to do on an annual basis. Generally speaking, you see there those last couple of rectangles. The annual administrative costs, whether that's with the TERS or with the PID, can be paid out of the TERS or out of the PID, as the case may be. Said another way, those funds don't have to come out of the general fund. So they are set up to be self-sufficient and again, not to be a drain on the general fund. That very last one just goes through city consultant roles. The one thing I would say is what's very important is engage your consultants early. Obviously, Mr. Sims has, between Mr. Godwin, myself, I talked with bond counsel as well. You have a team. This team is here to represent you and represent you solely. This slide simply goes through some of the things that we're trying to do within the context of a PID and or a TERS. So with that, I appreciate the time. I'd certainly be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Before we jump into general conversation, just a couple of tag little points. So the council, back in the 2016 time period, adopted a economic development policy, and that economic development policy right now is our policy related to tax increment refinance districts and public improvement districts. I think that it's high time that we update that, and so I think that one of the steps that we'll want to take as we move through the next few months is to actually make that a subsection of our financial policy, because I think that'll be a better way to get that front and center so that you're seeing that and engaging with that document more often. And then next, remember that tonight's council agenda includes a executive session for economic development. We're going to talk about a couple of the tax increment refinance zone issues in executive session in economic development. I'm going to ask Jason to stay for that. So some of your questions on a general nature, have at it. We can do that. If it gets specific, then we'll hold that for an executive session.
Just real quick, when you made the comment about the administrative costs being paid out of the TIF or the TERS, is that something we need to have, is it assumed that, or we have to have it in the document that it will be paid out of there?
I think you would want to have that in the document,
Okay.
that it
That's
will
what
be
I thought
paid
too.
as well.
Okay. Anybody have any comments?
Is PIDs, are they traditionally paid out of property taxes? Is that the norm, conventional?
So again, the PID is repaid with the assessment, which is only levied within the PID. So that is the only legal source of repayment that they have. So
Let me answer that in a
Okay.
more specific way to get at what you're asking. What we've always done is to sign a tax collection agreement with the Kaufman County tax assessor. And when we sign that agreement, which is what we've done with our maintenance PIDs that Jason was referring to, that's what puts it onto the property tax bill. And so it's an assessment, but it shows up on the property tax bill. So most people, when they get that, they read through it, and it's just a series of jurisdictions that are taxing them. One of them's the Public Improvement District, and they end up paying that whole package of taxes.
They would actually see that on their, like an itemized.
Yes, sir. Yeah, right, right. When you look at your property tax bill, I'm sure you've gone and you've looked and said, well, there's Trinity Valley Community College right there on my tax bill. And it creates a slightly longer tax bill because it just adds one more jurisdiction on the bottom of it. But that's not automatic. That's what happens when you enter into an agreement with the Kaufman County Tax Assessor's Office, and that's something that we've always done with ours, yeah.
Sir, thank you.
The question that I have, and you know, either of you, John can take it as well. So for the development of the project and finance plan or the development of the service and assessment plan, when those are in place, and let's say we're 5, 10, 15 years in, and we're looking at doing specific projects. Let's say that the TIF board in that case, and then it moves on to the city council, is looking at doing a specific project. Does that project need to be in that plan, or can it deviate from that plan?
So a TERS project and finance plan can be amended, so you have a little bit more flexibility with that. The service and assessment plan, as it relates to adding new projects, that can't happen. And again, remember, whenever our assessment is set is on the very front end, right? So we're setting that assessment, the total assessment before, let's say I buy a house in a PID. The assessment is set before I buy the house. So in your example, 10 years down the road, let's say we have another project, I've already moved in, you're trying to increase my assessment lien at this point, that won't work. So TERS, yes, PID, no.
Question. With regards to just government systems, you were talking about the water systems, MUDs, and WICIDs. Do they have to have a separate governing board? And if so, how is that board appointed?
So yes, because again, it is a separate governmental entity. I personally have never heard of one being in a city, for example, and just having city council as their board. Again, developers like this because it gives them more flexibility. Typically what happens whenever you're looking to issue bonds, for example, is a MUD or a WICID will have a large bond election on the front end before there's anyone living there. So there's 2 voters, 3 voters, right? Kind of the trailer on the empty land. And they can access those bonds subject to meeting TCEQ requirements at kind of any point thereafter, right? So as it relates to how the board, my recollection is the board is appointed on the front end, and then there's certain elections, just like city council has elections after a period of years.
They all have to have boards.
Okay. And then when we get into financing, and y'all can tell me if this is executive session or not, but so certainly there is debt issuance with this and bonds and such. So in the short term, what does that do to our bond rating or credit rating just on the front side of things?
So the nice thing is the rating agencies have basically looked at this and said, okay, because the assessments are the only thing repaying the debt, City of Terrell, your bond ratings are not impacted. So that's one of the big selling points is since it's non-recourse back to City of Terrell, that there's no impact to your credit rating.
Would you say that there's administrative costs and obligations like 20 or 30 years? So how long does it take these people to pay these assessments off?
So some people will pay the assessments over a full 30 years. And generally speaking, that's what you see. Others will, probably, I'm guessing maybe 5, maybe 10% will pay it up front and avoid the interest cost. But it's usually a pretty small number that pay up front.
I'll ask one more question. Have there been any recent or any attempts through the Texas legislature to make changes to TERS or PIDs, maybe even with kind of reporting and accountability for cities that we need to be aware of?
Nothing that I know of recently. I mean, the PIDs, From a financing perspective, the PIDs are relatively new. You know, if you go back to when PIDs started financing, doing capital financings, probably go back to about 2013, 2014, and that's when you started to see that market take off. So there has not been anything that I can think of off the top of my head in the last couple of legislative sessions that has had a significant impact as it relates to that.
One more question, bond counsel. Bond counsel, who is that group? Is that someone we hire? How does?
Absolutely. So your bond counsel, who, for instance, was bond counsel on the last couple of transactions, well, I say last couple, as long as I've been here, is Norton Rose Fulbright. And they are probably one of the 3 largest bond counsels in Texas. And I think that is one important thing, too, on slide 10, as you see there. Again, all these entities here represent you and solely you. So this would be your team representing City of Terrell interest in any kind of negotiations with a developer.
So bond counsel, for example, I probably had 2 lengthy conference calls with Bob Dransfield, who is with Norton Rose Fulbright, Jason, I think Mary Gail was on one of those calls. And we just basically go through, okay, whenever we were borrowing all the money we borrowed in 2021, were we getting the wording correct? Were we stating correctly the projects we were going to work on? Were we fully aware, and was I fully briefed on all of the ins and outs about the payback schedules on those and what we were really promising the bond market? Because the bond is a legal document, and that's what their particular specialty is. And so, you know, we go through a couple of iterations of saying, have we correctly described those projects? And of course, on that particular borrowing, one of the major legal questions was the question about, well, is it technically going to be taxable, or is it technically going to be non-taxable? And by golly, you need a really good bond counsel to answer those kind of questions. So that's the kind of advice you get from them.
Are we participating in capitalizing off of the bond financing? I'm kind of new to the council.
So as far as bond financing, there has not been any bond financings for any PIDs that I am aware of in the City of Terrell.
Do you think we would benefit from that?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I think generally it's usually more the developer coming and requesting that, right? As opposed to the city necessarily saying, hey, we'll do this for you. So.
Yeah, for background, the public improvement districts we have now, they all have the city council as the board of directors. They all have a pay-as-you-go approach, so they're doing pay-as-you-go maintenance and operations. The one that we do have that is capital-related is also a pay-as-you-go capital improvements, public improvement district. So there's not been any borrowing off of that. The tax increment refinance zone that we have, it was founded in 2007, and the very first borrowing that it did was after it had very, very substantial cash flow, and that was not for a developer project, that was for a public project, and that was one of our 2021 projects. Charles, could you step on the mic there?
On the, whether it's a public improvement district or MUD, there has to be full disclosure to anybody purchasing anything in a real estate, whether it's residential or what have you now, too. So, because the assessments are different from the MUDs, the tax portions and everything else, too. So it's actually through even Texas Real Estate Commission forms, too, so.
And it's too early to know what these assessments are. Is that an accurate statement?
It is, because again, each assessment will be based off of the infrastructure for each separate development. Each development would have to come back to you for approval of a development agreement, creation of the PID, levying of the assessments within the PID, issuance of bonds, if any, within the PID. So yes, all of those items will be coming back to you. And you're exactly right. One of the things that is included in the service and assessment plan is a notice of home buyer disclosure. And so we want to make sure that we, the city, can help control as much as possible the information that's getting to a potential homeowner, because we want them to know, yes, you are in a PID. Yes, you have an assessment to pay, things of that nature. And that is something that the legislature's done over the past couple of sessions to strengthen the information that's getting to potential homeowners.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Our next item on the agenda is, are we at 8.2, right?
Yes, sir.
Discuss resolutions initiating new tax increment refinancing. We didn't just do that?
Yeah, I'll just run through this real quick, and then I'll ask you to go
Okay,
into
so,
executive session.
discuss resolutions initiating new tax increment refinancing zones and reducing the boundaries of tax increment reinvestment zone number 1. Mr. Terrell.
So Mayor and Council, we've talked a few times about, well, okay, we're getting started, we're about to move forward. I want to start showing you paperwork or samples of paperwork that you're going to start seeing and being asked to vote on during this process, because as John Godwin will remind me, I think there's 49 individual things that end up needing to get voted on over the next few months related to all of this. So a starter kit is Resolution 1091, and it shows you basically a series of steps here. And I'll tell you flat out, Mary Gail is working on some revisions of this, but I didn't want to just hold on to it till it was perfect. So I'll just walk through it. Section 1, it says Statement of Intent. We're going to undertake all the measure required and has initiated the necessary process to create so many tax increment refinance zones. Whether we end up doing 4, or if on advice of council we end up breaking the 4 we intend into a total of 6 or a total of 7, so we get our boundaries correct. Land area will probably be the same as what we've talked about before, but we do have a little effort to make sure that we're dividing the geography correctly. Then it says, okay, we're going to instruct the city secretary to schedule, advertise, call, post notice of all required public hearings for the purposes of creating these tax increment refinance zones. Remember that you're being vague here, that sometimes you see us calling public hearings based on a specific date. And we say, hey, on this date in the future, have the public hearing. In this case, you're doing a partnership with Kaufman County. And so you want to make sure that you say, okay, we're passing this resolution, we're telling Dawn to begin a process, but you're not going to pencil in that date because you want us to make sure that the county is cooperating and we hold those public hearings for us after they take their step of voting as well. So it's a way of being polite to the county commissioners court. Number 3, the notice is going to have the descriptions, other documents required by state law. So there's a legal description in there, project plan, finance plan, maps, definitions, all the good stuff that needs to be in there. The next one, Section 4, you got to instruct myself to go create the city-county participation agreements in the form of an interlocal agreement. So that interlocal agreement between us and the county has to be tailor-made for each individual tax increment refinance district. Some of the tax increment refinance districts will have public improvement districts within them. Some of the tax increment refinance districts won't have public improvement districts inside of them, okay? So, we'll be very mindful of that as we're moving forward. And then it says, upon approval by Kaufman County of the resolution authorizing creation, then the city is going to go and fulfill the completion and these additional steps. So there's actually an ordinance that you pass during the process, but we don't want to pass our ordinance, again, being polite to our partner, the county. We don't want to pass our formal ordinance step until they've passed their order endorsing the creation of the tax increment refinance district. So I really just have Resolution 1091 in there as a sample to show you sort of the structure you're going to get used to seeing related to calling these. The next thing I have in here by way of sample is another good John Godwin product for you. So I appreciate John's work on this. I've been trying to make sure that this is getting into the right shape. And you can see I've got it on agenda item page 60, preliminary project plan. We're using here the one that's nicknamed right now Zone 3, Los Lomas. This is the 700-acre one south of Spur 557, north of Interstate 20, along the extension of Los Lomas Boulevard. And you can see kind of a cul-de-sac at the corner of Spur 557 and Los Lomas right now. This is the land going south of there, okay? And so it's got a lot of description. It's got, information related to the fact that we would create this zone prior to annexation and then annex it and make sure that we have it in place. I'll just highlight a couple of pages of specifics for you. There's some special definitions here. You got to define off-site expenditures, cornerstone expenditures. You turn the page, you get contingency/administration. That goes back to Jason's point. Our TERS number 1 never included an administrative subset. So we don't collect an administrative offset based on TERS number 1. It's our observation that if we're going to create TERSs 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on, that we better start being in a management practice of having an administrative set aside. And so you see a definition of that in the document itself. I'll flip over to agenda item page 67. There's a list in here of projects by type and cost. So Councilwoman Velasquez, to your point, is this set in stone? Well, this is the TERS version of a project list. And so you're talking here about the obvious things, right? An interchange between Las Lomas and US 80, an interchange between Las Lomas and Spur 557, Interstate 20 access roads, Spur 557 improvement, interchanges of Interstate 20 with both Sage Hill and Las Lomas. You can see the utilities, water, sewer. We put a big miscellaneous in there, which is the contingency administration and some of the other drainage type things, greenways. So all of that you're putting together and you're saying, hey, this is $154 million of future cost structure, okay? These projects, if you built them today, would be $154,800,000. So, okay, that's my project costs. Can the tax increment refinance district really generate enough money to pay for those? Now, that's the next part of your analysis, okay? So go over to agenda item page 73, and you can see a little look at this, right? So John, myself, the developer we're working with, we go through and sort of crank the machine and say, okay, what's really going to happen on this 766 acres, and how much property value is it really going to develop? So you get a base year, you start assuming some development there. Look at 2025, you get up to $107 million in assessed property value. You fast forward to say 10 years from now, 2032, there's a $500 million in property value on the books there. We don't do inflation adjustments on these because we don't do inflation adjustments on the project costs, so you're kind of looking for the straight dollars. You turn the page again and you get 2062. This one's envisioned as a 40-year tax increment refinance district, and it's $694 million of assessed value in that out year. So what do you do then? You say, okay, well, what do I multiply that by, right? I've got an assessed value. I got to start multiplying that by different factors. The next page, 75, says, okay, well, I'm going to multiply it by these tax rates, a percentage of City of Terrell M&O, none of the City of Terrell INS, a percentage of the of the Kaufman County M&O, none of the INS, none of the road and bridge, and there I can see my TERS contribution, okay? So I'd multiply those numbers by that taxable value. Well, how's all that math work out? You turn to the next page. John Godwin's been busy, right? You turn the next page and you can see this chart gets filled out here. You start off, I'll just use the 2062 version of it. And again, this is agenda item page 67. I got $669 million in property value. I have a base value that I'm discounting, so I'm really only have an incremental value of $659 million. I have a portion from the city, I have a portion from the county, and I have a total tax increment revenue that year of $4.9 million. Aha, I add all of that up from all of those many years, and I can see I got about $154 million. So that's a total revenue. It matches with the total expenditures. That's a balanced tax increment refinance district because they go together, okay? So we're not saying these are perfect tonight. I just want to give you an example so you can say, oh, you're going to start seeing this paperwork. It's going to start showing up in city council agendas, and this is just a little orientation to that. You go through some of the additional pages here, and I'm not going to bore you with them, but basically the idea is you go through the rest of this and you're kind of wrapping it up and you're getting legal descriptions and maps and all that sort of good stuff. So that's a quick overview, and Mayor, probably better to just pop into executive session and go from there, okay?
All right, so if you have any questions, please reach out to Mike on item 8.2. We do have a little bit of executive before we have the end of the session executive. So at this time, we're going to adjourn into executive session in accordance with Section 55 Government Code to discuss the following. Section 551.071, consultation with attorney. Section 551.074 personnel matters, upcoming recruitments. And we're going to go back and, oh. Hey, you can tell, look, they can come back in now. I know there's several. We're going to reconvene into regular session and consider any action on items discussed, if there are any. Does anybody have a motion?
This is what we just spoke about, Mayor.
Yes.
Yes, Mayor. May I make a motion that, the City of Terrell Development Agreement with the New Hope Baptist Church and with BH3 Industries for the 612 South Rockwall Residential Partnership be moved.
We have a motion from Grady Simpson, District 2. Is there a second?
Second?
I have a second from Mayor Ronnie Velazquez, Mayor Pro Tem, District 3. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain.
Abstain. Royce. All right, motion carries. Our next item on the agenda is business items, 9.1. Mr. Godwin, is to discuss and consider agreement for award for transportation development credits between the Regional Transportation and the City of Terrell.
We discussed this very briefly last week, and I'll be brief again this evening. Back last year, we requested and received a grant, federal grant for $1.4 million to do some work on Virginia and on Moore. That's an 80% funding, and we're required to provide a 20% match. The good news was we also applied for transportation development credits, and we did also get to transportation development credits. So there's a $1.4 million construction project that we've been approved for, although it's still undefined, and then a 20% match for $280,000. We got $280,000 in transportation development credits, therefore we don't have to pay any cash money at all. What you have on your agenda this evening is an agreement with with COG, Northeast Council of Governments, to use those transportation development credits on this project as our match, so we don't have to spend any cash whatsoever. And then in about 2 months, I'll come back with an agreement, an advanced funding agreement from TxDOT to cover the $1.4 million part of this project. Meanwhile, we've got KSA, which Mike mentioned on another project this evening. KSA, I'm meeting with them tomorrow, in fact, about the specifics of this project. On pages 85 and 86 in your agenda packet, there's some maps this time. Kind of shows you where that's likely to be. It's going to be mostly some sidewalk stuff and some landscaping stuff. Some simple, there they are, thank you, and some simple safety measures that we've taken. Also some what we call ADA ramps, but the accessibility ramps at intersections in a number of places on both Virginia and on Moore Avenue. So that's kind of the project for now. We'll be doing that. You'll have an agreement with TxDOT coming up, and you'll have an agreement with the engineer coming up, and then we'll actually be building the project many months down the road. This is just the first step.
All right, thank you, John. Does anybody have any questions on the credits, transportation credits?
We said 280K up front.
Correct, that's our match.
Then
for
later the
overall
1.4
project. We're
million.
getting the 280 from COG, and we're getting the $1.4 million from TxDOT.
Beautiful.
It's free to us. So.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and just as a clarification, we will have to do a budget amendment, and we will have to hire the engineering firm to engineer all of this, because our contribution will be the, quote, in-kind contribution of the engineering cost of this. I don't want to quote that number, but I'm going to tell you we'll have to go find around $200,000 out of the capital improvement fund to get the engineering done to make all of this happen. But if we do the engineering, they'll pay for the 100% of the project.
Any further questions? Hearing none, is there a motion on 9.1?
I move to approve resolution number 1091 as presented.
We have a motion.
9.1.
I'm going to maybe make an amendment on that one and just say we're going to approve the agreement between the Regional Transportation and the City of Terrell.
We have a motion from Mayor Ronnie Velazquez, Mayor Pro Tem District 3, and is amended by Tim Royce, District 5. Right? So is there a second?
Second?
No?
Oh, I can't second.
Yeah, you made the motion, so is there a second?
A second.
I have a second from Grady Simpson. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion will carry. Item 9.2, discuss and consider a final plat for Crossroads at Terrell, Phase 3B, Lot 10, Block 5, including Crossroads Parkway and Independence Parkway right-of-way being 13.063 acres out of the John C. Hill Survey, abstract number 202, City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas. Mr. Fenner.
Mayor and council, I'll be as quick as I can, real fast. So in front of you, you do have the final plat for Crossroads at Terrell 3B Lot 10, Independence Parkway. And in your packet, we do have some offsite easements we required them to have. This picture that you see up here actually shows the extension of Crossroads and then Independence Parkway going south towards the Interstate 20 piece. And then, of course, the fire lanes on that particular site there, or plat there. Here's the offsite easements shown. We had easements that we needed to make sure we were getting to. We wanted the extension of Crossroads all the way to the west side of the property, just so we know where that's going and know for future development that was going to be platted, and as well as a easement instrument document. Do you have on that other, back to that map, just south of the first phase, we do have a south public access easement going south of the existing complex that will go towards our park area, as you know, that we have down there on the southern portion. And then we do have another easement that will actually go across the bridge too. There, you know, this Magnolia Grove, the Ventures Phase 2, it's essentially the second phase of Ventures Phase 2, Magnolia, that they're doing. You did approve a developer's agreement and a planned development for this property in June of 2021. Everything's been taken care of. We are working through with them. As you know, the council approved a developer's agreement for a great design boardwalk style amenity enhancement in the southern portion of Phase 2 that backs up onto the lake, little pond out there. They will be constructing some of that area inside that developer's agreement. We did have some other attachments to the plan itself. The construction plat did meet the site plan. You have all that document in here, the stuff that you've already actually approved, the PD ordinance and so forth. We are moving pretty quick with these guys. They're going to be doing a temporary construction driveway off the west side of the property until the Crossroads is extended. And they plan on moving dirt here probably within the next month or so. And so we will have to monitor the public improvement construction, and we do have a building permit in, which we basically have done a review, and those plans are pretty much approved at this time. However, those plans usually come after the public building permits come after the public improvements are done. So we're going to manage that situation. So they're moving right along. The plat was approved unanimously 8-0 by the P&Z, and we recommend approval.
So what was the contingency on the 8-0 vote?
The contingency was that listed above. We have the letter of credit surety bond for the sum of the public improvements, which would be not the off-site stuff, but which would be a fire lane, mostly the fire lane, basically. Because this is apartment complex, we got to make sure that before any vertical building happens, before we go up, we have the fire lane for safety, and then of course any water or sewer, and then of course engineering has to sign off on that.
So for our, if we move to approve, it's with that contingency?
You can just accept the P&Z's recommendation.
All right, council, any questions? 9.2, is there a motion?
Mayor, I move to approve 9.2 as presented, which is approving P&Z's recommendation.
We have a motion from Tim Royce, District 5. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second from Grady Simpson, District 2. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion will carry. Our next item on the agenda is 9.3, discuss and consider Henderson Streets Lots Partnership Agreement. Again, Charles Fenner.
Yes, sir, this is one of our development agreements we've been working on. And you'll see in the back of the audience, have wonderful staff here that pretty much just keep me awake and doing things. And so I just want to give them a pat on the back. So they're wonderful in helping me out with all this stuff. But they're a big part of this. So this is the Matthew Scott property over off Henderson in the Stallings edition. And basically what we've done with we're planning to do is transfer two properties from the city of Terrell. He's going to be creating two lots, two biddable lots. There's a lot in between the city of Terrell lots, and then he owns a lot, and so we're combining those, and we'll show you on the map. You can see there in the blue, those will be combined as one lot, and in the red, that'll be combined as one lot. And those will each individually have a house. So there'll be actually two houses, 100% brick and stone, restricting all the second floor to 75%. We have a porch standard of 96 square foot, minimum depth of 7 foot, 7 foot, and a minimum width of 10 and 33% coverage there. Two large shade trees will be planted in the front, and we're again looking for that streetscape piece. On here, this shows crepe myrtle, but that's not what will be planted. It will actually be planted either oak, pecan, elm, or southern magnolia. I'm not sure if you can really see it on that map, but they'll have to replat for the 4 lots. There's combining PID 37658, and that's a city lot, and then which is on the end, and then this 37569, that's the city of Terrell, which that's just right next to it. Those will be combined, and he'll have to replat those. And then 37570, which would be the 3rd lot that belongs to Cobb, that has nothing to do with it. The ones in red, those are all city of Terrell. Those 2 first ones are city of Terrell, and the furthest northeastern one is Mr. Scott's property. And those will all be combined into one. These are typically basically approximately, or whatever, 7,000 square foot lots. And so through this and the transfer, what the city will be doing will be $2,000 per lot on these. And then Mr. Scott will be responsible for replatting those. And that's it. We recommend approval of this property. We did have some house plans. This house, I believe, has been built in another place, another area, and Mr. Scott's all on board. We'll have some additional landscaping like we did in the Carlisle developers agreement and so forth. So we'll get basically a replat here of the 5 lots coming together as 2 and 2 new homes.
Does anybody have any comments, questions? Is there a motion on 9.3?
I move to approve the Henderson Street Lots Partnership Agreement as presented.
We have a motion from Mayor Ronnie Velazquez, Mayor Pro Tem District 3. Is there a second?
Second.
Have a second from Grady Simpson, District 2. Is there any further discussion?
So,
Hearing-
to staff, I appreciate you working with the company to create more housing in the Stallings Addition area.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries. Our next item on the agenda is 9.4, discuss and consider Mineral Wells Partnership Development Agreement. Mr. Fenner.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is as pertaining to the previous zoning case you guys had in front of you before. Basically, what we've laid out for their company obligations is 75% quality, the brick and stone, accepting limited architectural features, and then 25% on the second story. There's a max of 20 lots in the subdivision. The big point I was making earlier, that it couldn't be rezoned, no matter what, it would never meet any of the standards of SF6 or 7.5, and that's how we decided to figure out a way to make this work without going through a variance process or losing a few lots here because of the way the property is shaped. And so the variance piece that we've included in here is that there will be a 56-foot lot width, okay? So the 56, as you know, doesn't meet the existing, before the ordinance is passed, or the new lot width, but we believe we will have a decent and very good quality development even with this. The minimum depth is gonna be 120 feet, but that's only gonna be on 1 or 2 lots. The average depth is 133, so if you do that calculation, that is about 7,100, 7,200 square feet. So we have that volume there. There's going to be a lot of additional landscaping. I think Mr. Reyes pointed that out. They like to do the landscaping. There'll be a big entryway here in the front. They are going to insert the 58-foot streetscape right away, and that will have basically the back-to-back paving, the 10-foot medium, which will have the 10-foot landscaped area where a tree will be planted in the same location on every lot. And then you'll have the 4-foot sidewalk, and you'll have a garage setback of 21 feet from that. There is a rear yard setback of 25 feet. That's in the SF 7.5. There's a 7-foot side yard that's in the 7.5. The porch may extend into the front yard setback 5 feet. We did put that in there to allow for that. And of course, that would be in front of any part of the buildings that you may see. And then again on H, this is where we address the base zoning in these developers agreements. All homes in any zoning single-family district, in zoning category shall be built or meet minimum requirements identified in 7.5 for the floor area, for the size of the garage and so forth. And so that'll be your base piece with those few exceptions. As you move on he actually did a little extra work for us as we met the next day, so we were trying to make this work. And if we get over to, now right in front of you, you'll see the 2 lots, which is, one is the 3.6 acres, one's 1 acre, and so that's about 4.5 acres. As you know, that's not a lot to develop. Look at the rectangular shape. If we want to optimize a good, decent quality development and make sure we have things that fit, that are acceptable, we're going to basically be seeing the road come through here, just like this. You'll see at the end, we did have a connection to Wood Street to create some circulation. You'll see the street section there to the right is what I was talking about. This is not our typical 50-foot street. This is a 58-foot street. And the big difference there is that 10-foot landscape. So you will really see a different view as you're driving down these streets with these landscape islands there. They plan on doing some additional landscape up front. So that's that little site plan. And they did give us a rendering of some of the layout. Now this is not, this exhibit is not attached for approval. This is just to give you an idea of what it's gonna be, or could be. And so, you'll see there that they'll have the trees planted basically up there. We'll be moving those trees up front. They can have trees in the front and the back, and of course we're going to want them to save the trees where they are because there's a lot of them, but we still have that streetscape creation, and that's going to be a good thing for us. With that said, we definitely, this is a great couple that they were ready to go, and willing to talk to us and do whatever they needed to do. They didn't have any problems. They take this personal as they build these houses, and I think you'll see a really good development out here from the Reyes. I think she's pretty much in charge of all the inside and the development and designing, and so we heard a lot of good stories, and so we do definitely recommend this developers agreement, that the council approve this agreement. There you go. You see a little rendering. Again, this is not 100% of what you'll see, but it's just an idea of looking down the road there. If this were to pass, we basically would just move into the plating phase. And so that plating phase would be the construction plat. And that construction plat would be replatting those two lots. The engineering civils come through, and then we just go through the typical process. And I will tell you that the rest, they are also looking at other lots around town, just infill, just one or two lots, and that we're going to be trying to work with them and see what their ideas are to bring forth to you.
Thank you, Charles. I want to say two things. You know, when they got up to speak, two things hit me that I feel like they really want to make a difference in our community, and that's good to have. People who are coming in new, wanting to develop, and wanting to bring quality. Two, they had high remarks for staff and their dealings with you guys. So we appreciate that and their ability to recognize that. And I'll be done there. Does anybody have any comments or questions on the Mineral Wells partnership?
Comments? It
Yes.
looks beautiful. I appreciate the renderings. They're just really good to see. I appreciate the applicant being here. I appreciate the staff's time in working with them, and I'm excited for the landscape islands, if you will. So this is a little bit different, and I want some in my district. With that being said, if I had one critique, some lots are above the 60-foot width. My message always to staff is, hey, this is a yes vote from me, but it's important for staff to hear. I would rather us hit at least a 75% quota of the minimum lot size, meaning if that minimum lot size is 60 or 65%, I'd like for 75% or greater of those houses to be developed, those lots to be developed at that original width. I don't like voting on anything under than 60 foot. It's just, there's a logic behind 60 foot. It allows two cars and a driveway. There's certainly a lot of driveway that you've built into it, so I think we're okay. That's my only comment.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Just to insert, we do take your comments, and when we're talking with these people, we make sure that, I think the word is, we always have to sell you guys, because you all have different ideas, and so we try to throw those in. So we just get where we get, and again, in the end, you approve it or you don't, or make suggestions and what have you. But point well taken, and we certainly listen to that.
Thank you, Fenner. Is there a motion?
I'll just reiterate, what I won't say it again, but as I mentioned earlier, I'm happy that the couple has spoken. I certainly concur with the mayor, and it has nothing to do with my confidence in this project moving forward, but I will let Councilman Royce know that they've already asked for a map of District 3, so he's going to have to wait. So we can make sure we get that to them. Well, and all jokes aside, I do move to approve the Mineral Wells Partnership Development Agreement as presented.
We have a motion from Mayor Ronnie Velasquez, Mayor Pro Tem District 3. Is there a second? Have a second from Grady Simpson, District 2. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion will carry. Next item on the agenda is 9.5. Discuss and consider awarding bid for Project 20-18, Downtown Revitalization Phase 2, Grove Street construction contract. Mr. Sims.
Mayor and Council, I'm going to ask Frank Stevens to tackle most of this item, but I do want to give you the little bit of background. We're working off a grant here, and some of you recall we were originally trying to get this grant to pick up at the corner of Grove and Ann and run some sidewalks going to the west. We thought that was a great place, and we were going to support Southwestern Christian College with some sidewalks on the south side of Southwestern Christian College. Our grant agency said, nope, don't do that. They'd rather have us go the other direction on Grove, and so that's fine. We worked through that process. We left a carve-out area for the future town square improvement, so it's kind of a goofy map, and it's an exhibit in here, but basically we're taking from Francis over to Rockwall on Grove, and then from Adelaide to Virginia, again on Grove. And those seem like disconnected, but our comment to the grant agency was, well, our town square project will be in between those two sets of sidewalks. So they were satisfied with that. A lot of you are familiar with what I like to think of as the bunker on Grove Street. There's some old railroad ties that lift one of the yards up high on Grove Street. This gives us the opportunity to clean that up and make sure that we have a smooth walking area through there. So it's a good project, and Glenn Caldwell engaged SPI to work on this for us. So Frank, take it away.
Okay. Well, just real briefly here, we got 6 bids on the project. We opened bids on January 27th. They were very good bids. We were really surprised. And the low bid, there were 2 bids that were down there in the running together, and there was a low bid, but we are actually bringing to your recommendation for this second bidder. And the reason for that was that the low bidder does not have any prime experience, and we didn't know them. We did get some pretty decent references from the primes that they had subcontracted work for. But they also had no experience with these federally funded grant projects. So we were just a little bit hesitant to recommend them to the city. And so we're recommending that the award be made to Texas Civil Construction of Royce City. They recently completed the Safe Routes to School sidewalk project on South Rockwall. And I think they'd completed another project for the city, a park project, in recent times, so we're familiar with them. So what we're recommending is an award of the base bid and both alternate bids, alternate bid 1 and 2, for a total amount of not to exceed $271,089 for that construction.
Frank, I just want to thank you for doing your due diligence on the council, and I think your recommendation to go with someone that's more, has more dealings with this type of job and working with these federal grants is well taken. Does anybody have any comments on this? Again, this is to accept alternate bid 1 and 2, not to exceed $271,089 with Texas Civil Construction out of Royce City.
I'll be very brief and thank you, Frank, for your due diligence and your presentation. My comments are related to a drive that I and a fellow council member had earlier today on Grove Street, and I smiled as I saw a couple of kiddos on their bikes on Grove Street at this specific area. And I smiled at them because I knew that we had sidewalks that are coming forward. So while there may not be many residences on this specific road, portion of the road, section of the road, we still do see kiddos and families that will walk and use the space. So I think it'll certainly improve our safety.
Thank you. Anyone else? Comments? Is there a motion on 9.5?
Mayor, make a motion that we approve the construction contract to Texas Civil Construction for the base bid, alternate bid 1, and alternate bid 2 for a total of $271,089.
I have a motion from Tim Royce, District 5. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second from Mayor Ronnie Velasquez, Mayor Pro Tem District 3. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion will carry. Item 9.6, discuss and consider authorization resolution for a youth soccer facility use agreement. Mr. Sims?
So, Mayor and Council, this is kind of a tough conversation. We had a nonprofit running our soccer leagues for quite some time. There were quite a few meetings with staff and that youth league leading up to the spring soccer season. They were very confident during part of that they would be able to move forward and they would be able to run, as they have in the past, a very good, robust soccer season. Similar to our difficulties and the school district's difficulties and everybody's staffing difficulties, they seem to have run into a big problem with having enough volunteers to staff that, and they're announcing that they're unable to continue. So we're trying to find a solution here, and we think that there might be an opportunity to run the program through the Excel Center. And it's not really ours to make that commitment, right? So I'm going to be very respectful of the Terrell Independent School District. They're contemplating running this youth soccer program through the Excel Center, and I don't speak for them, and I don't want to tell you that they've agreed to do it. On the other hand, we do know that if you have somebody who's capable of doing it, and they're considering it, they're trying to go through their due diligence, there may be some things that they find that make it not possible for them. We wanted to be able to have an agreement where we could offer as much assistance as we possibly could. And so you can see that this is rather open-ended, basically because I didn't know what to put in it yet. But I would like your authorization here to be able to negotiate something and get something that we could put in place. Some of the things that we would do that would be out of the ordinary here is that we typically say to a youth league or an adult league that's got a facility use agreement for us, that they have to indemnify the city and they have to take on all of the liability of the operation of the program. So one of the nonprofits, they'll go out, they'll get an insurance policy, a kid gets hurt, a mom gets injured, whatever it might be, they pay that claim against their own insurance. I think in this case it's pretty clear that we may be pushing the school district too far to ask them to come up with the liability associated with the program, and I think it's something that could fit squarely under our insurance program. So I'm pretty sure that that's going to be an element that we would put into the facility use agreement here that would be different. Another one would be funds, and so for them to pick it up, they're obviously not just going to gather up a bunch of volunteers. Right, we already had that effort. We found that wasn't fruitful. They would actually need professional staff to run the program. So there's a good news and a bad news there. I think everybody knows and is comfortable with AJ Knight. I think he does a great job running the Excel Center. So you got a perfectly good supervisor, but just like everybody else in the world, nobody made 16 copies of AJ Knight and he's everywhere all the time, right? You got to have more bodies than that. My inclination is to tell you that it's going to cost the school district somewhere around the $70,000 mark to run this as an annual program, right? To have enough paid staff to do the coordination, wrangle up some volunteers, make sure there's stipends that might be available from time to time for coaches and other people who need to be there as contract employees and that sort of thing. So lots of different options for what that would be. Obviously, if we start spending money under this agreement, I need to bring that back to you. It may be that we just do something for the spring and then let the rest of it be discussed after that. But I feel like I need your authority, and I know this is open-ended, but I need some authority to go sit down with the school district and say, the city's willing to be your partner, and assure them that if they're willing to pick up this very, very difficult program at the absolute last minute, which we should all be very thankful for, that we have an entity that's capable of doing it, that's considering doing it. I don't want to put too much pressure on them to do it. If they decide they can't, then they decide they can't. But, and that's all fair. But I'd like to provide some support to the program. I'm warning you that part of it would be insurance support, and I'm warning you that part of it might be financial. And I'd like your permission to go forward and try to get a youth soccer season for the spring worked out.
So I did a little bit of research on what TISD is wanting to do, reached out to them to find out how many kids would be involved. Currently, they have about 300 to 350 kids in the Terrell teams that would not be able to participate in soccer. And we know who these kids are. Mostly kids from Terrell, right? But their only option would be, if Terrell did not have a soccer program, would be to go into Forney. And they charge anywhere from $70 to $100 per player to play in the Forney leagues, where if the school district did it, they believe that they could do it for $45 to $50, a lot less and more affordable to the kids in Terrell. And then they wouldn't have travel expenses, you know, going to play into Forney. They would actually play here. He has, if you know AJ, he has big plans, and man, he's ready to tackle this thing on. And I just told him, I said, look, we'll talk to the council and see where they are and where, if they're willing to commit. But total with it, between the basketball and the soccer, you're talking about 1,300 kids involved in our area. Some of those are select teams that are coming to play for the indoor basketball. I mean, not, basketball's indoor, but indoor soccer program. And his thought is that he could combine an outdoor and an indoor league, so that if there is bad weather, he just moves them in so that they get to play. They would handle all of the scheduling, and they go from anywhere from U4 to U13, and I think they even have some that are 19 years of age that participate in the indoor. So he thinks it'll be a good match for the school district to take over, and we don't lose the program, and we don't lose these kids. Last thing they need to be involved into something and to keep them busy and off the streets. And soccer is one of those avenues which they can do that. I just wanted you to know that as we have this discussion.
So I would say I'm supportive of it. So youth sports is what got me to the Parks Board and to council. Back in the early 2010s, yeah, there were 400 kids out there, and then 300 kids over at baseball, and it was all volunteers, and the volunteers have dried up. They just have. So, and you hate to see kids with nothing to do. That's why we still have a pool that operates at probably not a great budget line. Sometimes it's just the state of our community says that we have to pitch in more to make sure that youth have something to do. So I'm supportive of it, and I know that's a dollar commitment. If it's a staffing commitment, man, I'm supportive of that too. So.
Anyone else?
And I don't have any opposition at this time. Of course, it's a negotiation with the school district. It's a discussion. But I did see where, you know, the online, the association was trying to recruit volunteers. You know, I've had family members go through. I know there's a lot of kiddos that go through the youth soccer. You know, if possible, I would like us to support them. And it sounds like, you know, Terrell ISD is doing a really good job already in managing that. I certainly would like to have, you know, feedback on what that discussion turned out to be, and then reassess what the best plan is after the initial discussion and plan goes into effect.
Well, you know what? Again, it would be a partnership with the city and the school district, and we talk about them all the time, but the beneficiary of a program like this are the kids. And if you've ever been out there on a Saturday or driven by on a Saturday or after school, and you see those kids out there practicing, they're doing something that they love. And again, they're not at home, they're out, they're getting the exercise and building the relationships that teams do. Does anybody have any comments on Grady?
It's great to see this program. I know when I first got on the council, this was something that Mr. Sims remembered that we was trying to execute with the school district. It didn't quite go through. I'm just happy to see this work out.
You got anything? Okay.
Just from an expectation standpoint, I think this could easily come back at the around $100 a child range, so that's going to mean somewhere between $30,000 and $40,000.
Does anybody have, so this is a consider item. It's a resolution for the youth soccer facility use agreement. This is going to authorize Mike Sims to continue, is that correct? In the negotiations with the city, with the school district? All right. Is there a motion on item 9.6?
Mayor, make a motion that we approve Resolution 1092.
Have a motion from Tim Royce, District 5. Is there a second? Second. Have a second from Stephanie Holmes Thomas, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem, District 4. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion will carry. Our next item on the agenda is 9.7, discuss and consider resolution number 1090, resolution authorizing continued participation with the steering committee of cities served by Encore and authorizing the payment of 10 cents per capita to the steering committee to fund regulatory and legal proceedings and activities related to Encore Electric Delivery Company, LLC. Ms. Don Stahl.
Mayor and council, we discussed this last week on the agenda. This resolution basically authorizes the city of Terrell to continue its membership with the 162-member coalition at a rate of 10 cents per capita based on the population. And I will be happy to answer any questions.
We've talked about this. Is there a motion on resolution number 1090?
Mayor, make a motion that we approve Resolution 1090.
We have a motion from Tim Royce, District 5. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second from Grady Simpson, District 2. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion will carry. Our next items are consent agenda items. We're going to take these one at a time. Mr. Shumpert, would you read in 10.1?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we bring to you tonight on second reading ordinance number 2895, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, amending Appendix 2, zoning ordinance of the City of Terrell, Section 15, as the Executive State Residential 64, EE 64 District, Section 17, Single-Family Residential 10, SF 10 District, Section 18, Single-Family Residential 7.5, SF 7.5 District, Single-Family Residence 6, SF 6 District, Section 20, Townhouse Residential TH District, patio homes, zero lot line, single-family attached homes, townhomes, and two-family homes, duplexes. Section 21, multifamily residential MF District apartments. Section 22, Texas Heritage TX District. Section 30, heavy commercial BC District. Section 30A, Research and Technology Park RT District. Section 32, use regulations 1A, residential zoning districts, and 1B, non-residential zoning districts, charts, and Section 44, definitions, copies of which are attached hereto as Exhibits A through L and made a part hereof for all purposes, providing for severability and providing an effective date. And again, this comes to you tonight on second reading.
All right. Thank you, council. Is there a motion on 10.1? Is there a motion on 10.1?
Mayor, make a motion on the consent agenda as read, 10.1.
We have a motion from Grady Simpson, District 2. Is there a second? I have a second from Tim Royce, District 5. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Our next item on the agenda is 10.2. Again, Mr. Shumpert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we bring to you tonight on second reading ordinance number 2896, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, providing for the creation of a planned development, PD 21-05, under the provisions of Section 31A, Appendix 2, zoning ordinance of the City of Terrell, on certain real property consisting of 4.591 acres of land out of the John C. Hale Survey, abstract number 202, Kaufman County, Texas, and more particularly described by meets and bounds on the plat and legal description attached here to as Exhibits A, and under the terms and conditions specified in Exhibits B, C, D, E, and F, all of which are attached here to and made a part hereof for all purposes, providing for the repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing an effective date. Again, this comes to you tonight on second reading.
Second reading, is there a motion on 10.2?
Move to approve item 10.2 as presented.
We have a motion from Mayor Ronnie Velazquez, Mayor Pro Tem District 3. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Tim Royce, District 5. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion will carry. Next item is item 10.4. 10.4. No, we're not gonna, we're passing on that one. 10.4, please.
10.4. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we do bring to you tonight on second reading ordinance number 2898, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, amending Appendix 2, zoning ordinance of the City of Terrell, by changing the zoning classification on certain real property, more particularly described as 9.417 acres of land, 410,079 square feet, situated within the John C. Hale Survey, abstract 202, City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, from agriculture, AG, to single-family 6, SF6, as shown on the plat attached here to as Exhibit A, and made a part hereof for all purposes, providing for severability and providing an effective date, ZC 21-010, again comes to you tonight on second reading.
Is there a motion on 10.4?
Mayor, make a motion that we approve 10.4 as presented.
I have a motion from Tim Royce, District 5. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second from Grady Simpson, District 2. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion will carry. Informational reports, item 11.1, the Terrell Fire Department monthly report, the 11.2, National Incident-Based Reporting System, and 11.3, the Star Transit ridership reports for January of 2022. If you would reach out to Mike on those reports, and he can get those to you. We need to go ahead and move into executive session. At this time, we're going to adjourn into executive session in accordance with the Section 551 of the Texas Government Code to discuss the following. Section 551. Economic development.
Restless Lake Bills. Restless Lake Bills.
Did he go to sleep?
My legs like to move it now. It's a Parkinson's bill.
For 5 hours and 7
My legs,
minutes.
they hurt.
Wow.
Uh-huh.
And they kind of jerk.
Hey, will you double everybody's pay tonight, please?
Said I'm crazy, I know, but
Huh? Can we double everybody's pay tonight?
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
They've been like asleep.
We're going to reconvene into regular session and consider action, if any, on items discussed in executive session. There are none. We're adjourned.
amen.
Thank y'all. Long night.
Christmas time.